Hi everyone, this is Koinzell here. So today we have the Primordial Jade cutter video ready. This is going to be the final Albedo weapon math guide video. I'll probably do one more compiled video that's better for casual viewers, where I compile all the findings that we have from the previous weapon videos in terms of artifact stats, artifact comparisons, which in terms of the weapons, and I'll do a constellation review for Itto as well, whether or not it's worthwhile to go for its constellations, especially with Itto in mind. Okay, for this video itself, we will run through the following material. So I'll talk about his rotations. I actually found a way to further optimize his rotation. We'll talk about obviously the DPS, the artifact comparison, then we'll talk about the weapon comparison for Primordial Jade cutter versus Cinnabar Spindle. Okay, I'll do a final recommendation as usual, and finally we'll look at the updated figures based on the updated rotation as well, because it also optimizes for Cinnabar Spindle, which would then affect the comparison of Freedom Swarm versus Cinnabar Spindle. So first off, we will quickly talk about Primordial Jade cutter. It's not exactly a new weapon by now. It's a very simple weapon. It gives you a whole lot of crit rate, 44.1% with a low base attack. So this is very similar to Redhorn Stone Treasure. Just like Redhorn Stone Treasure gives you crit damage. As for the effect, R1 is similar to Homa. Its effect is similar to Homa, rather it's R1, R5. So R1 gives you 20% HP increase with a 1.2% of your wielder's max HP as an attack bonus. Likewise for R5, this is just doubled. So right off the bat, although the weapon has a low base attack, this attack bonus more than covers it. And then you have the HP percentage gain as well, and the crit rate gain. So this is actually one of the best 5-star weapon for a sword user. Unfortunately, Albedo is kind of split skilling, so Primordial Jade cutter does attempt to solve the attack skilling part of it. But is it good enough against Cinnabar Spindle? Or I should say the other way around, right? Because Cinnabar Spindle is new. So is Cinnabar Spindle good enough to actually replace Primordial Jade cutter, even in hybrid builds? We will definitely reach a conclusion for this in this video. Okay, so stats wise is standard. My artifact stat, we have the defense sense, Geo Goblet, as well as crit damage hit piece, because obviously we have a lot of crit rate from Primordial Jade cutter. We can go with crit damage hit piece or circlet. And because PJC gives so much crit rate, it also allows us to go for 70 CR with 200 crit damage and get more defense. Okay, so I am going for a more realistic approach here, where you go for 60 to 70% crit rate instead of like 80 or 90, because I know how the math works, I know the golden ratio, but in terms of practical application, in terms of RNG being a bitch, I'll say 60 to 70 CI is enough. And that's where we try to optimize the damage that we can do by increasing our defense percentage instead. Okay, now that I've covered that, alright, in case you guys are curious, right, at level 9 elemental skill, this is the type of damage we are expecting from 4-piece Husk stacks on your Transient Bloom prop, your E prop, with his A1 effect active. Okay, at level 12 skill, it's, let's see, it's 27k, 27.8k, so almost 28k, but this is a very heavy investment, because you need C3 for this. Even I myself don't have it that right now. My Albedo is C0. Now allow me to talk about the rotation now. I actually did some testing. I gotta admit I was a bit dumb when I did the Freedom Swarm video. I didn't realize, I was so absorbed in doing the math, I didn't realize that Albedo is already there. I could just test it out, and that's exactly what I did this morning. I tested out the rotation, the M1 here, whether we can do the E prop. So M1 was enough to trigger. Sometimes you need N2, but it's fine because N1 and N2 is really fast. So literally the playstyle is just spam your any each time you need to press N1. Just spam it. Even with N2, it's still 4 seconds for this string, because you gotta realize I was being very conservative. So this 4 seconds was more than enough to cover M up to even N2. So now that I have added the N1 plus E prod here in the rotation, it means that hybrid does get to perform better. So this helps our PJC. This also helps our Cinnabar Spindle. It doesn't change the rotation for Freedom Swan though, because Freedom Swan, like I said, the priority is on triggering elemental reactions. And in fact, Freedom Swan was the one where I already have an N1 plus E prop there. Okay. So pure defense, I'm not going to talk about that, because for PJC, you are supposed to do a hybrid build. That's the whole purpose of using a PJC, because you want to use your burst. So with that in mind, let's dive into the artifact comparison. First, we'll look at Albedos, then we'll look at it with C6R5 Itto and C0R1 Itto. So similar format with the previous weapons. And I'll do a final TLDR for 4-piece Husk versus 2-piece Petra, 2-piece Husk. Oh, sorry, 2-piece, 2-piece Petra, 2-piece Husk. And as an added bonus, I will also do a quick comparison against 2-piece Petra and 2-piece Nobilis, because I know that's the BIS artifact set for Albedo hybrid build as well. Okay. So first off, it's going to be very straightforward here. You have 4-piece Husk damage figures with pre-JC. You have here 2-piece Petra plus 2-piece Nobilis. Okay, you see the figure. I know I should not use the highest figure, but it's just like an easier reference, right? And you have 2-piece Petra, 2-piece Husk. So let's look at the percentage comparison. I will just, in this particular session here, before I even talk about DPS, right, damage per second, I'll just do a very simple comparison between 2-piece Petra and 2-piece Husk in terms of the damage. Yeah, actually this statement is a bit wrong. It's not DPS, it's damage, but it's fine because their rotations are the same, the amount of time that they take up. So technically speaking, DPS will also give you the same percentage difference. So you see that without burst, obviously, the 2-piece Petra, 2-piece Nobilis will be better. Oh, sorry, 2-piece, what am I talking about? Without burst, 2-piece Petra, 2-piece Husk is better than 2-piece Petra, 2-piece Nobilis. Because 2-piece Nobilis it buffs your burst. So only with burst then do you see a better figure on 2-piece Petra, 2-piece Nobilis. But to be fair, like what I said, right, if you're using PJC, you should be doing a hybrid build. So let's look at it if you are using burst. Do you see? 2-piece Petra, 2-piece Husk is still better by about 2 to 5%, depending on all the different combinations, etc. R1, first 4 figures here, R1, sorry. First 4 figures here are R1, first four, the next 4 columns are R5. Okay? So 2 to 5%. So now that we have established that 2 Petra, 2 Husk is better than 2 Petra, 2 Nobilis, for the rest of this video, I will just compare 4-piece Husk versus 2-piece Petra, 2-piece Husk. So this is DPS, because 4-piece Husk does have a different duration, so we need to do a DPS figure. And now you see the difference is about 22 to 27%, because I'm excluding C0 no burst. I'm also excluding max stats, because like I said, there's no way you can get max stats without wasting time trying to get the max stats. It's just not efficient for a comp where you want to just set up for your Itto in an Itto comp. Okay, so difference between 4-piece Husk and 2-piece Petra, 2-piece Husk is 22 to 27%. But although that being said, I still included a figure here in case there are folks who want to get that for max, the 4 C2 stacks. So this result I'm not too surprised, because majority of his damage in his rotation is actually coming from his elemental skill. That's why the 4-piece Husk will do better, because 4-piece Husk also gives you more stats. And the stats that it gives is defense, but mainly defense percentage and Joe. So defense percentage helps his E. Now that's Albedo only. Let's look at the damage with Itto. So you have a C6R5 Itto and C0R1 Itto. So pretty straightforward. We always get Itto's damage figure. We add it on to the total damage for the two different rotations on 4-piece Husk and 2 Petra 2 Husk. Even though the time is different, we then divide them by their actual amount of time taken so that we achieve a damage per second. Okay, and this is the result. Without burst, 2 Petra 2 Husk is better than 4 Husk. 3 stacks, because like I said, you can only get 3 stats if you the best optimized way of doing the rotation without wasting too much time is 3 stats, and it involves recasting as well. So this is 2 Petra 2 Husk is better by 7 to 8% for CCS Alpha Itto. When burst is used, 4-piece Husk will be better by 1 to 4%. 1 to 4%. How about C0R1 Itto? So same thing with the figures earlier. Now C0R1 Itto. Since C0R1 Itto deals lesser damage than C6R5, your 2 Petra 2 Husk advantage drops from 8 to 5. When burst is used, 4-piece Husk is even better now by 5 to 8%. Mainly because of additional 3 sets from burst, causing the 1 set from recast to have a smaller impact. Yes, that's true also. And also because C0R1 deals lesser damage. Alright. So TLDR for artifact comparison. Albedo with C6R5 Itto to Petra 2 Husk is 7 to 8% better if you're not using burst, 1 to 4% worse if you're, provided your Albedo E is not destroyed by enemies. I repeat this again and again. It's a caveat that you might think that not having to recast is an advantage, but I actually think the other way. Because I have experienced Albedo's E being destroyed quite frequently. Albedo with C0R1 Itto, 2 Petra 2 Husk, 5% better. Then 5% better when you're not using burst, 5 to 8% worse if you are. And I always need to say this, if you have to recast your Albedo E with 2 Petra 2 Husk, regardless of whether it's because of the boss size or destroyed by enemies or whatever the reason, 4-piece Husk will be better. So I personally don't like having to attach such a caveat to my artifact set. And if you're using PJC for hybrid build, you should be casting burst. So regardless, 4-piece Husk will be better. This right here. And without a top tier DPS like Itto, your 4-piece Husk is actually... Okay, I included the C0 here, so it actually should be 22 to 27%. 16 to 27% if you include not using burst. Okay, now let's talk about the important portion, which I think what most people want to know about, which is PJC versus Cinnabar Spindle, CS. And obviously I'm going to use 4-piece Husk because that's the best artifact. We have already established this in the earlier portion here. Now you know why I do the artifact comparison first. So weapon comparison for 4-piece Husk and Albedo only, because if it's a weapon comparison, there's no real need for me to include Itto's damage, other than for the case of Freedom Swan, where Freedom Swan is there to buff Itto's damage. So you have R1 PJC here, R5 PJC, and Cinnabar Spindle R5. These Cinnabar Spindle figures are already updated based on the fact that I added in the M1 and E prop right after using burst and before recasting his E. So it's optimized. But the same thing is done for PJC as well. Okay. So look at the percentage differences here. It's a very interesting result because R5 CS, a free 4-star event weapon, is better than R1 PJC by 2.7 to 16%, 16%, sorry, 2.7 to 16% if burst is used. If your burst is not used, obviously it will be much higher, it's like almost up to 29%. But since we are talking about PJC, I'll just be nice and say hybrid build. So burst is used. If burst is used, it's a range of 2.7 to 16%. The difference. Isn't that incredible? And what's even more incredible is that R5 PJC, which costs like $1,000 if you're unlucky, barely outdoes R5 CS only in one particular scenario, and that is C2 with burst. Here, the red figures by 2 to 3%. And these three, if you remember, this is without geo resonance, this is with geo resonance, this is with C2 plus Goro, and this is with C6 Goro. So only this specific scenario where you are at C2, you use your burst and you don't have C6 Goro, then PJC does better, and it's only by this small amount does better than R5 CS. Only by this marginal, such a marginal difference. If you have C6 Goro, R5 CS will still do the better than R5 PJC by 1% at C2 with burst. It's mind-blowing. This result is mind-blowing to me. So I also gave some thought about why we have such a result. Majority of Albedo's damage in the rotation comes from his E, and CS really buffs his E significantly, and we are making the best use that we can with regards to using M1 to proc his E. We are using the recast of E to re-trigger the proc as well. We are really doing all we can to optimize, and those optimizations all come in terms of his E. So that's why CS has such a strong advantage over PJC. Another thing I want to bring out is that I'm not using Albedo's burst the moment Albedo's cooldown is over, because by the time Albedo's cooldown is ready for his burst, Itto's burst has not ended yet. It's near his end, but it's not ended yet. So it's only a matter of a few seconds, but it's still there. I mean, I have to put it out there that to be fair to have an objective analysis, I have to put it out there to say that the rotation that I'm doing right now is not full 100% casting Albedo's burst wherever we can, because the focus is on Itto's burst wherever we can, while we will try to optimize Albedo's role as a sub DPS as much as possible. I hope that clarifies. Now, given that PJC is only marginally better at C2 with burst without C6 Goro, I would recommend to use Cinnabar Spindle and just repurpose your R5 PJC to another sword user. If your PJC is R1, it's a no-brainer, just switch to CS and make better use of that PJC on someone else. Now this is going to be a bit overlapping with my final recommendation, but it's fine. I'm just going to talk about the final recommendation now. CS Cinnabar Spindle is so good that it's even outdoing PJC in hybrid build. Other than R5 PJC at C2 with burst without C6 Goro. But again, like I said, my math are based on rotations to optimize both Itto and Albedo's DPS, not just Albedo's DPS. If you fully focus on Albedo DPS, the gap between CS and PJC will shorten. But just take a step back and think, is it really worthwhile to use a 5-star PJC weapon that's recognized to be one of the BS weapons for several sword users, when it only gives you marginal gains over a free 4-star event weapon? Isn't it better if you take that weapon and give it to someone else who can make better use of it? If you're going to use Albedo in an Itto comp, I would recommend CS over PJC. No brainer, like I said, since the comparison more than speaks for itself. Another factor to think of, right, to bear in mind, is that CS also does much better than PJC without burst. And I've already shared my concerns on using Albedo's burst against Itto's C2 in the FS video. Please do check it out if you have not seen that yet, because how should I put it? There's really a lot of analysis going on in that video to talk about how the Freedom Swarm buffs really work. And if word on the grapevine is true and FS is going to be the signature weapon for Albedo on his banner, then all the more the video that I've done, the previous video I've done on Freedom Swarm will help you. Okay? So, if C2 Itto really makes Albedo's burst not worthwhile in using, then you can just go no burst mode, which pure defense playstyle, especially if you're using a Cinnabar Spindle, and you're still using the BIS weapon for no burst, which is Cinnabar Spindle. So Cinnabar Spindle is the BIS weapon for Nobles playstyle, pure defense. It's also the signature. This is also the best option for hybrid weapon. Hybrid build. And he only loses out to R5 PJC without C6 Guru and at C2 with burst. Do you realize how many conditions there are for CS to not be the best weapon for hybrid build? I don't know, I find it very, very amusing that this is happening. So the marginal gains really make it such that I'll say just use your repurpose your PJC on other sword users. Just make better use of that PJC. But my recommendations, do assume you have artifacts with good enough crit stats that you do not need to rely on your PJC. If you want to rely on your PJC until you get better artifacts, that's also a good way to go. Assuming your Albedo is already using PJC. If you are not, then this doesn't really apply to you. And oh, there's one more point that I wanted to put here, but I think I missed it. So the thing about PJC, right, is that it also allows you to go for 100 CR with 200 crit damage. But it requires absolutely perfect artifacts. And of course, you sacrifice your defense percentage as well. You're not going to get 55% defense from your artifact substats. You're only going to get 25%. You sacrifice your defense percentage to be lower in order to try to get 100 CR. But it requires absolutely perfect artifacts. What do I mean by that? You see my number here. This number denotes the number of artifact upgrades that can go wrong across your 5 artifacts, which means that this is like based on really good artifacts with an allowance of 1 upgrade going wrong per artifact. Not perfect, right? This is not perfect, but this is very good. If you want to hit 100 CR with 200 CD on Albedo, you're gonna need absolutely perfect such that this number drops to 1. Ignore this because this is me being lazy and doing a C6 Goro by doing something else with my formula. So just ignore this, but bear in mind that everything else is correct. It eventually ends up to be correct, so just ignore this -1. For this, right, so in order for you to get 100 CR and 200 CD, you need absolutely perfect artifacts. Only 1 artifact upgrade can go wrong versus 5. And if you ever tried to min-max artifacts in Genshin, you know this is really difficult. Okay, it's really difficult. I know because I've been min-maxing my artifacts as well. Okay, so that's just one additional point I wanted to share. PJC does offer you the option to get 100 CR, but it does require absolutely perfect artifacts. Unlike with Itto, I can get 100% CR with 200 plus crit damage, and I still have only 5. I can still have 5 artifact stats gone wrong. Artifact upgrades go wrong. Right? So for the artifact stat to go with PJC, I think should be clear by now. It's 4-piece Husk. It's better in all scenarios except when burst is not used, which again is not relevant for PJC. So same thing, you go for 2-piece Petra, 2-piece Husk as a placeholder until you can get 4-piece Husk. So that's for Freedom Swan. What did I say Freedom Swan? Okay, that's for Primordial Jade Cutter. Now let's talk about the updated figures for Cinnabar Spindle and then the comparison against FS. I'll just do a updated TLDR here. So effectively, it obviously affects when you're not using burst because that's the rotation that we updated, right? The one that uses burst. So the figures are as such. From 1 to 3% is changed to 3 to 5% for 2-piece Petra to be worse than 4-piece Husk. 2 Petra, 2 Husk to be worse than 4-piece Husk. And for Z0R1 Itto, it changes from 4 to 8 to 8 to 12. And if I don't look at Itto, the change here is huge. It goes from 11 to 20 to 22 to 29%. So effectively, the rotation, the updated rotation, benefits 4P Husk greatly. Because it is only for the rotation where you need to recast in, and we manage to optimize the time. Instead of waiting for 3 to 4 Fatal Blossoms to trigger, we simply spam our NA to trigger one more additional E prop. So that is the difference that I've done here. That is the improvement I've done here. So with this, our Cinnabar figures are really good. It just Albedo alone allows us to hit these type of figures. Let's not talk about this, right? Because like I said, this is really for equal to know. Realistically, it should be these two figures. So you have about 391k, which is about almost close to 400k, and you have 461k here. 461k here is expensive, okay? It's talents 12, which means C5 Itto minimum. Sorry, C5 Albedo minimum. This on the other hand is C2. Sorry, this on the other hand is C2, and if you use C0 with burst, it's still a 352k. So still very respectable in terms of total damage. Now, let's see. We want to talk about FS. So these are the updated figures for FS based on this updated rotation that I just talked about. So effectively, the 9 to 11% boost previously on a C6 R5 Itto with R5 FS, the 9 to 11% overall boost when you factor in Albedo's damage as well now drops to 6 to 9%. So your R5 Freedom Zone will still give you 20% boost on the Itto's figure. There's no change to that. But you get a 6 to 9% boost only in terms of the overall team DPS. If I just look at Albedo and Itto only, by the way, I'm not looking at the other two, because they don't really factor in here when I'm talking about Freedom Zone. Although technically speaking, Freedom Zone does buff the flat slot attack as well. It doesn't really do much for Goro though. The 20% attack I'm talking about from R1 Freedom Zone and 40% attack from R5 Freedom Zone. But that's just way too much math for me to cover, so not at the moment. And the worst thing is, if you only have a R1 Freedom Zone, you still get a 10% boost on Itto's figure, but your overall DPS when you factor in Albedo plus Itto is only a 0.1 to 1%, 1.7% boost. That's pretty bad. And don't forget that again, these percentage figures are based only on the first rotation. I have not split it further. It's quite bad. Wait, let me just double check. I may have already split it. Yeah, sorry, I have already split it. Sorry. I was thinking something was wrong here. What I was trying to say here actually is really more applicable. It's okay, it's not wrong, it's the way I read it. What I'm trying to say here on first rotation for both is this. So first rotation, you still get 20% boost, but the 9 to 11% is really for both rotations in a pair. Let me just clean this portion up to prevent any confusion. Okay, so this is what I mean. Yep, sorry about that. Okay, done. So everything else remains the same really, because the percentage figures drop. Wait, what happened here? It should be 6 to... I understand what happened. Okay, never mind. I'll correct this later. Just bear in mind that 6 to 9 and 0.1 to 1.7%. So all of this is okay. I know why. Oh my god. It's what happens when you reuse the template, right? In order for familiarity, but at the same time it causes this issue. Alright. So these are the updated percentage figures. So it's looking even worse for Freedom Zone here, right? Because Cinnabar Spindle gets improved based on what I've tested. But Freedom Zone, we have already included the M1 plus E-Prod right after using his burst and before his recast. It's already included. So yeah, it's pretty bad. The rest of it is pretty much the same. Okay, so let me go back to the PJC. Yeah. So TLDR, Cinnabar Spindle better than PJC. Just use Cinnabar Spindle. I know it's ironic that it's a weapon that is really designed for its elemental skill. It's so good that it does better than PJC in hybrid even. Quite amazing if you think about it, but okay. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. I hope this video has been helpful to you. I'll try to do one compiled guide. Try to compile all the simple one. Just do up a few simple one-liners per weapon or per artifact, and also do a constellation review so that you guys can properly assess whether or not to invest in Albedo further or even to get a C0 Albedo. Okay, C0 Albedo is a bit tough because C0 Albedo that will require me to do math for Ningguan, and weekend is here. I'm typically very busy during weekends now, but I'll try my best to at least do the compiled Albedo math. Sorry, I just shouldn't call it math anymore. It's the compiled guide for Albedo, so that it is also more helpful for the casual viewers. Because I do understand that my videos are a bit heavy sometimes because of the math. So I do hope that the compiled character guide at the end of all the math series will be helpful to casual viewers as well. Do let me know if it's not, then I'll have to see what else to do to improve on that. Okay, if you like the content, remember the video and click subscribe for more. Bye.